welcome into The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. I'm Ken Ray.
I'm Nicholas Raba.
And I'm Nicholas Tacek.
Each week on The Checklist, we put you and your digital life in various situations. I'm buying a new iPhone. I'm selling an old Mac. Then we make a checklist of the things that you can do to make that activity safer. This week, you are going on a trip. Millions of people travel every day, whether it's for business or pleasure. Now, you make lists for things like things you need to pack, things you want to do when you get to where you're going, maybe souvenirs to buy or postcards to send. Of course, you want to bring your technology with you, but with the new destination, there are new considerations as well. Your Mac is compact and your tablets can go where you do, but just because they're easy to carry doesn't mean it's safe to just start using them wherever you are. For the safety of your devices and the security of your data, there are a few things that you'll want to do. And today we'll look at several ways that you can prepare and keep yourself safe on your trip. On today's list, secure passwords and username choices, create a fresh backup before you go, enable Find My Mac, hide your hardware, do not automatically connect to Wi-Fi, and finally a bonus item on the list, preparing with the proper peripherals. Now, the first couple, guys, we've actually hit before, but let's touch base with them again, starting with secure passwords and username choices.
Indeed. Starting off, set secure passwords or passcodes on your device. This might seem really obvious, but not everyone locks their phone or computers with a strong password. It might take a few extra seconds to type it in, but the added security is definitely worth the effort. If someone steals your device while you're traveling or if you lose it, this will prevent them from gaining access to your computer right away. And from the Mac, we've gone over this before. Setting your password is really easy to do from your Mac. You just go to Users and Groups from the Preference pane from your Apple menu. And then from there, you could set your password and username. Be sure to set something that isn't that easy to guess. And you could also create a custom message to display on the lock screen. Maybe some information about who to contact if found would be good on there. Also, don't forget to set codes on your iOS devices. Strong 6-digit alphanumeric key options to afford yourself more protection. Once you've given your devices an essential level of security before you travel, it's time to take another precaution. What's the worst part of losing a device to travel damage or someone with sticky fingers? Losing all your files, of course.
You know, sometimes I wonder should we make this like the sixth item on every checklist? Because just about every week we talk about the importance of making a backup of your data.
Yeah, it seems like we're hitting on this one almost every single episode. But, we really got to hammer it home. It's one of the most important steps you can take, not just for travel, but, stuff happens, hardware fails, a fire or tornado. You don't want to lose everything. So, making a good backup is a good precaution to take before you travel in any event, just in case there's any unforeseen circumstances while you're away from home. We always try and be careful with our devices. When you're at home, if your computer's kind of sitting there in the office or living room or wherever, you're not moving around, stuff might not happen. But when you're traveling, laptops can fall out of suitcases. They can get knocked out of your hand when you're taking your seat on the airplane. All sorts of bad things could happen. Possibly a bit more of a chance of that than when you're at home. So if something does happen, you don't want to be left out in the cold without any of your files and data. So just, put that on your agenda. Pack your toothbrush, make a backup. Basically, you should really be in the habit of already making those backups on a regular basis. If you're not, now's the perfect time to begin. If you're on your Mac, all you really need is Time Machine. You can either use Time Capsule or a third-party external hard drive of your choice, and takes a few clicks to set it up, and we've covered that part before. The backup step itself, depending on if you've run a backup before, can take some time. So don't wait till you're the very last minute before you have to go board the plane before you think about this one. But taking the time to do that a little early can afford a peace of mind while you're traveling. If you would lose your hardware itself, you can always replace hardware. Getting your data and your hard work back is not quite as easy if you don't have a good backup. on iPhones and iPads, backing up is actually Apple's really made it easy. You can either sync your data with iTunes itself if you plug your phone or your iPad into your computer. Otherwise, you can just set up iCloud backup. If you're on a Wi-Fi network and your device is plugged in, it'll automatically back it up overnight. You actually don't even have to think about it, which is probably the best thing with that type of backup. And if you've got that set up with iCloud, when you're on your trip, if you're taking photos or anything else, and you lose your device on the way home, at least you're not losing those mementos of your trip.
Now, you said a moment or two ago that, should you lose your laptop, you can always replace it. And that's true, but, hopefully what happens is if you misplace your laptop, you're able to find it and get it back to you. One of the ways to do that, of course, that Apple has set up is something called Find My Mac. You want to make sure that that's set up before you travel. How do we go about doing that?
Well, yeah, in the heat of the moment when you're rushing to your gate at the airport, it could be easy to leave your Mac behind in that coffee shop, or you forget in the hotel room before you have to catch that taxi to the airport. To avoid a lot of anxiety, oh my God, where's my laptop? Where did I leave it? Go ahead and set up Find My Mac while you're still at home. On the Mac, it's really easy. It's just still, again, in the system preferences with iCloud settings. You can set up, when you have Find My Mac set up, we've covered this before, it will allow you to log into the iCloud website and locate where your Mac last connected to a network. So it can give you kind of a geolocation. Did you leave it in your hotel? Did you leave it at the airport? Is your laptop on a flight somewhere else that you're not on? So basically, once that feature is enabled, it will allow you to either track it down yourself if it's still at your hotel, or contact police in the event of theft rather than loss. So again, open up your system preferences, click iCloud. There's a checkbox for Find My Mac, and turn on location services if they're disabled, because location services are necessary for Find My Mac to determine where your Mac is in the world. We have said to turn off location services for unneeded services in the past, but this is one of those situations where it would be a necessary thing to have enabled. Also, if you have an iPhone or an iPad, you'd want to turn on Find My iPhone on your iOS devices. Again, a very similar process. If you open up the Settings app and go down to iCloud, there's some steps to take that will let you enable Find My iPhone, and the same results. You can track down your device if you lose or misplace it, or if it walks away from you.
One of the ways, I guess, to make sure that your device doesn't walk away from you, I was sort of bemoaning the fact recently that the new laptops, the new MacBook Pros from Apple, don't have the light up logo on the back. But then it occurs to me, as we're doing this particular episode, that's going to make them less attractive, right? You walk into a Starbucks, you see the light up Apple logo, you know what kind of computer that is, and you might be able to get a couple bucks for it if you maybe relieve the person who owns it of that laptop and take it someplace else. But there are other things that we can do to make our stuff even less conspicuous, I guess you might say. Talk to me about, even though it's going to be in plain sight because you're going to be using your technology, but talk to me about hiding your tech in a way.
Well, it goes with that out of sight, out of mind mentality, and also not flaunting your hardware out there for it to grab extra attention from people. If you look at the travel sites, they recommend taking off your watches while you're out, or anything that brings extra attention towards you. And you could do these type of things by hiding your hardware a little better, putting them in protective cases that hide that glowing or non-glowing logo on it. It just makes it so it doesn't attract that extra attention. Plus, you're getting the extra protection for the hardware itself, for when it drops or falls, or you're just a little bit clumsy with it. Backpacks while you're traveling are a good way to carry them around versus just carrying them in your hands. And if you're traveling overseas, or you really don't trust your hardware left in your hotel room, it's probably a good idea to have a nice backpack that looks more universal versus a laptop-specific bag.
One thing to note with regards to leaving hardware in your hotel room, a lot of times those hotel safes that they have in the closet can be unlocked with a default passcode. So it's actually, I've seen recommendations before that it's not as smart to put your valuables in those hotel safes since they have known security vulnerabilities, and instead to hide your valuables in with your dirty laundry. Like, no joke. People have said, just throw your laptop underneath your, dirty socks, and it's less of a chance of anybody who's briefly in your room from, digging through that and snagging your expensive hardware.
That's kind of gross, though.
Well, I mean, if you have it in a protective case, then
that's true. A protective case, and then inside a bag, and then under your unmentionables.
Exactly.
Now, again, it's so weird because there are so many things that we have set up in our lives for convenience, and yet that convenience does or can pose a security risk. You've got down on the list this week, the next item on the list, beware of automatically connecting to public Wi-Fi. Well, let me back up, actually. Is it beware of doing that, or just don't do it?
I personally would say just don't do it. But it's a personal preference. If you have no alternative, if you're in a foreign country and you don't have a data plan in that country, or your data plan is going to be incredibly expensive to use, and you're just looking up directions to get to a restaurant for the evening, okay, a public network is not the end of the world. Mm-hmm. However, I wouldn't be using that to check my email or do online banking or anything like that. We've covered this before as well. Public networks, kind of by their very nature, are public, and sometimes it's people on that network who are watching traffic from other people. Sometimes it's maybe an app you're using isn't connecting to a website or service in the most secure manner, so that stuff's going kind of plain text across the wire. There are cases where the actual public hotspot is compromised on purpose to gather information. There's all sorts of possible issues that can come from using public Wi-Fi. So again, make sure your mail app isn't running before you try and connect to that public Wi-Fi. Kind of turn off the automatically connect to networks on your device. If you are, again, in a case where you have absolutely no recourse and you have to use a public network, it would be a really good idea to beforehand have a VPN service set up. Because that will give you a layer of protection, even on a public network or potentially hostile network, where you know that your connection is going to be secure. Basically, a VPN service will wrap all of the data being sent from your device to whatever servers, your bank, online banking, or your business email server, and it'll wrap that up in kind of a layer of security. There are some downsides. Most of the VPN services out there are subscription-based with varying monthly fees. Some of them are faster than others, some of them are slower than others, but no matter what, when you're using something like a VPN service, you will notice a slowdown in your network connection because everything is basically being wrapped in extra layers of security and has to take extra steps to get to your email server or wherever and get back to you. But in situations where you don't have a secure network, an alternative VPN is definitely the way to go. If you're traveling in the States, or whatever your home country is, and you have a data plan on your phone that is substantial, a lot of the newer versions of iOS allow tethering, so you can set up a network using your iPhone's connection and share that with your laptop or whatever, and that's also definitely an acceptable alternative, just as long as you're keeping an eye on your data usage, since a lot of times if you go over your data, you get lots of extra charges at the end of the month from your cell phone provider.
I got 2 or 3 things to ask around this one. First of all, we spent last week talking about what all the different acronyms or I guess initials stand for. We should go ahead, just for the sake of clarity. VPN stands for Virtual Private Network. So like if anybody's sitting there going, what does VPN mean? That's what that means. Is there a way... I mean, do you guys have a list of like, here's a good virtual private network, or here are several trustworthy? Because I know there are differences in prices, there are differences in the way they perform, there are differences even, sometimes I've noticed there are even differences in sort of like the skins. Like something has a very sort of technical, almost scary look to it, whereas something else has sort of a cartoony look or something like that. Do you guys have a list of trusted VPN providers that people can check on the site? Not asking for them today, just saying, can we send them to securemac.com/checklist and find a list of good VPN services?
Yeah, when we post the this episode on our website, we'll include a list of recommended VPN services that are available.
All right. And I have one other question to ask you about. This actually happened to me this past week. I am not set up to sign on to whatever's available as far as Wi-Fi. I am, however, set up to automatically sign on to trusted networks. So like when I take my laptop someplace else, I do whatever I have to do to get on securely there. But when I come home, it just finds my router and says, oh, I know this guy. I'm going to go ahead and hop on, right? When I went to a hotel this past weekend, and while I've never stayed at this particular hotel, I have stayed at this hotel chain before, and it automatically hopped onto its Wi-Fi.
And you will see the same thing happen. I believe AT&T has a deal with Starbucks in the United States where it will do the same thing. You go to a Starbucks and your phone automatically connects.
Yeah.
That is it's the reality of how it goes. You've connected to a trusted network in the past, and it sees that as the same network. A solution for that would be to go into your network settings on your device, and you can kind of go through the list of trusted networks or previous networks you've connected to, and there's a little info button that you can push, and you can click a forget this network button, which is, after you're at the hotel, maybe you need an at-home checklist to go through. What do I need to do now that I'm back home? And that would include forgetting those networks you connected to while traveling.
Luckily, I did have my trusty, dusty VPN ready to go. So I was okay, but I was sort of surprised to see, I expected to have to go through another step or two, and it was like, oh no, we know each other, even though I was someplace else entirely. We did have one more item on the list today. Be prepared for different power needs. Now, if you live in the States and you're traveling in the States, you just want to make sure you don't forget your charger. But I had a friend borrow a recorder of mine, golly, almost 2 decades ago now, which I hate to think about how long that was. But he borrowed a recorder of mine and took it with him on a trip to Europe, and then brought me back something that was pretty much useless because he had not taken the proper peripherals and fried my mini disc recorder. So forgive me if I just hit why this is important, but first of all, talk about why this is important, and second, how do we find out what we need before we go?
Well, it's pretty much exactly what you just said. If you travel to a country that has a different type of power grid than what you have at home, and you plug your device in, best case scenario, your device might just not have enough juice to work, but more likely your device is going to be fried. A lot of times the different power adapters and plugs kind of try and prevent you from plugging into something that would damage your device, but that's not always the case. Apple sells a kind of a travel converter kit where you can pop off that little in the States, the 2-prong or 3-prong adapter from your power supply for your laptops, and pop on one that will be able to fit into the different type of outlets that you might find while abroad. When we post this episode on the website, we will also post a list of the different power outlet types for the different countries, so you know which type of conversion kit you need to get, or what you should bring with you out of one of those conversion kits that has plugs for every different country. If you're traveling domestically, obviously just make sure you're remembering your charger in the first place. But the other thing is, you'll also always want to remember to be using the power supply that is meant to go with your device. This is more prevalent for laptops, for example, than anything else. Especially in those older, if you see on the PC laptops, they have those little tiny plugs. It's not MagSafe, it's not USB-C, it's just a little plug that looks kind of like a headphone jack. It's way too easy. I've done this before. I think I did this with a hard drive a number of years ago, an external hard drive, and I plugged in the wrong power supply for it and fried it, because different power supplies have different outputs. Again, kind of like different power sources in the wall have different outputs in different countries. So you really want to make sure you're using the correct power cord for your device and not just grabbing that random one and hoping it's the right one.
And that actually, I mean, I guess we're packed and we're ready to go, whether it's over the river and through the woods or across the seas or where have you. Just taking that little bit of extra time that we talked about can keep you much safer and also keep your hardware safer, both from being nicked or, well, not nicked, I'm sorry, because I'm talking to Nick and Nick. That's a terrible thing to say, both from being stolen or from being fried. Now, we've mentioned our website a couple of times before. We zip through this pretty quickly because, we're trying to get you to the airport on time. But if you want to go back over this checklist, or if you want to look at some of those VPN alternatives that we talked about, or some of the other features that we talked about today, the website to check out is securemac.com/checklist. That address again is securemac.com/checklist. And if there's something else that you think maybe we should have included on the travel checklist, or maybe you have another question either about traveling or something else that you'd like to ask us, the email address to do that is checklist@securemac.com. That address again is checklist@securemac.com. And if you can't remember that, remember this: you are listening to The Checklist by Secure Mac. And we'll talk to you next week.